In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can create our own tree libraries to add to the existing library that comes pre-installed with Forester. Now, whenever we select a tree and we go to tree library, we see that we have 72 tree species that can be created from the library, but you can create as many variations on that as you want. For example, I'm going to start from, say, the eucalyptus tree and create variations and save those in the content browser so we can use those over and over whenever we need. If we look at the tree models that I have, this is coming from the eucalyptus model. For this one here, I made it a bit younger, so I reduced the height of the trunk. I changed the material color for the leaves. And I made some variations so that the two trees don't look the same. Now, of course, I can change the seed since these are procedural models and not ready-made trees. And once I'm happy with the seed, I can save that in my library. Now, the way to do it actually is to start from a model that we have over here and then create our own variations. Okay, so to start off, I'm gonna create a new Forester tree. This comes with the default tree. I'm gonna go to my tree library and I'm gonna choose, for example, the eucalyptus tree. Now, the eucalyptus tree has, if I go to tree parameters, 3 viewport levels and 4 render levels. This means that whenever I render this tree, it's going to render at 4 levels, but whenever I look at it in the viewport, I see just 3 to speed up the interaction. Now I'm going to set the viewport display to 4 so I can see the leaves as well. Now this also comes with the default materials, which I can change. Now this texture is displayed onto the leaves. What I want to do now is start to customize this tree. To be able to customize it freely, I'm going to go to my branch global and I'm going to uncheck generate branches. That way I can just look at the trunk. If I look at the trunk, I see that it has too many variations in the radius along the length of the trunk. I would like to customize this. So I'm going to go to trunk parameters, and here what I'm going to do first of all is look at the trunk displacement. If I turn it down, the trunk is going to be straight or without any displacement, but if I turn it off, I start to displace the polygons of the trunk. Now, of course, I need to make this look more realistic. So what I'm going to do first of all is reduce the scale of the displacement, all right, to something like 15. And I'm going to reduce the strength of the displacement to something like 5. Now, whenever I give this a render, it's going to look exactly the same as I see it in the viewport. But if I want it to be more high resolution in the render, then I would go to the trunk render subdivisions and I would increase that. If I set it to 5, for example, the subdivisions of the trunk are going to be multiplied by 5, and therefore I'm going to have a more high resolution trunk render, and this will be much more visible whenever I add lights and shadows. The second thing I want to do is work on the radius of the trunk. I want to make this look like an old tree. So what I'm going to do is set the radius to a higher value, something like 72, but I don't want it to reduce or taper down along the length so much. So what I will do is go down to the trunk profile, and here I'm going to lift up this point up here so that the trunk does not taper down. Now this part of the trunk is going to be invisible later because I have a lot of branches sprouting out from here, but if I wanted to actually reduce the radius at the tip of the trunk, I'll press Control to add a point, and then I would lower this down, and I would just take this tangent and lift it up. Another thing I can do is check trunk caps to add a cap to the trunk like so. But as I said, this will not be visible in the render. Something else I want to do is have the trunk twist while it goes up. And to do that, it's very easy. I'm going to go to twist cross section and I'm going to increase the value like so. Also, to make this more visible, I'm going to increase the root flare strength like this, and I'm going to make the flares go up the height of the trunk. I'm going to reduce the twisting, play with the bias value, and there I have it. Okay, another thing I can do is play on the turbulence of the trunk. You see, if I reduce the turbulence down, the trunk is going to be straight. But if I increase the turbulence, the trunk is going to be curvy. And this curviness is also controlled by the scale of the turbulence. So I can increase or decrease the scale. If I decrease the scale, I'm going to have more turbulence. If I increase the scale, I'm going to have a smaller turbulence. And I can play with the strength of that. I can fade the turbulence at the top by increasing the fade bias like so. Also, I can make the trunk wavy if I wanted to do that in either the X or the Z direction. And this will give me a spirally looking trunk. Of course, in this case, I don't want to do that. But by the way, if we take the deformation bias and we increase it, that way we make sure that the base of the trunk is not rotated. So I'm going to undo those things. And okay, I'm done with the trunk, except for the scale of the texture. I would like it to be slightly bigger. For that, I'm going to go to my UV setup, and I'm going to reduce the tiling along the U to 5, and along the V to 1. This will make the texture appear bigger. I would also have to play with the tiling for the branches, but so far I have something I can use.